Alright, so in this video we are going to be building another one of our candy carts. Now, I keep making videos of these candy carts. We have two other videos on very similar candy cart, but as we build more and more candy carts, we learn more things, we do things slightly different, and hopefully better. So, learned some things in the last one that we're going to put into this one. So we're going to be using this blue jogging stroller. You can see I have a army of jogging strollers. Anytime I see these for $10, $15, $20, I pick them up and steal the wheels off of them. But this one here has really nice wheels, and I think will make the perfect wheels for our next cart. Now, this cart is also going to be the biggest cart we've ever made. So this customer ordered a little bit bigger cart as well. So I'll work on taking these wheels off this cart, because in order to start cutting the wood, we really need to have some specific dimensions on these wheels so our cart will sit level. So that's my first task. Take this apart and get the wheels off of it. All right, I thought I would show you this. These are, I kind of like these because they have this kind of hubcap thing going on. And of course, to remove that center post that they come with, we're going to replace that with just a simple bolt and a wing nut. I'm going to leave these, I'm going to leave this on, and I'm going to leave this center hub. But you can see here, there's these two little retaining clips. So when I remove this one, I just used a hammer and brute strength method. And on this one, I decided to go ahead and remove that little retaining clip, and that will reveal this little snap ring here. Okay, so I will take my snap ring pliers, whatever I did with those, I just had them, and I will go ahead and remove that snap ring, and then this will just slide out nicely. So here it is right here. So these are your snap ring pliers. These are the Cobalt brand. You can see there's two little holes, and they have different attachments, but essentially they go in that hole, spread that clip, and then you're able to pop that off there. So I'll go ahead and do that quick. All right, so you can see these wheels are in really good shape. The actual tire part, of course, they do hold air, but you can see we have a 6-inch bolt, half-inch carriage bolt. It does stick out, the head sticks out a little bit. And then on the back side, we have 3 washers. So what we'll do is we'll have 2 washers on the inside, and then we'll have 1 washer. Our leg to our cart will be in between, and then we'll have 1 washer on the outside with our wing nut. Okay, so there you go. That is that part of it. So the wheels are taken care of, and so I will go ahead and steal the other wheel off of here and set it aside. Who knows, we may get another matching cart. This one here, see how these wheels, and this one's kind of interesting. Let's take a look at these real quick. Is you see the tread pattern on that one is, I think, yes, it's actually identical to the, yes, I believe they are absolutely identical. So what we'll do is we'll take these little wheels off, and we could use those for a cart as well. But that's kind of interesting that, but you see how these still have the little knobbies. So you can see, even on those wheels there, they didn't get used much, where this one doesn't have really any knobbies. But they are the same basic wheel. So they probably are the same manufacturer, because they do look quite similar. So at any rate, that's how the carts and whatnot work. Over here, these, I do always on the lookout for yard carts too, because of course they have wheels too. These did not have tubes in them for some reason. Somebody stole the tubes out of them, but this was only $10. And so nice set of wheels, bigger wheels too, but for 10 bucks, I'm not going to destroy a good wheelbarrow because I need a good wheelbarrow. But I do have other yard carts. And the other thing about yard carts is a lot of your yard carts, the wheels will actually be solid rubber, which can be kind of nice because then you don't have to worry about inner tubes. But don't be scared about changing out an inner tube. They're cheap. You can also just get a tube repair kit that usually for a couple bucks, and that usually will fix any tube if there is a leak. But so don't stress over that. A flat tire is easily fixed. Okay. So now what I have to do is I have to get an accurate measurement, semi-accurate measurement, from the center of my hub to the bottom of my wheel. Okay. And we need that dimension so that we can cut our legs appropriately. So I will get that dimension and we'll go from there. Okay, so we have all of our pieces cut to length, and I'll go through those real quickly for you. The nice thing about this cart is it doesn't take a lot of material to build these. So for this particular one, we used 4 2x4s, 8 foot long, and then we need 2 2x6s that are 8 foot long, and then we need 8 fence pickets that are 6 foot long. So not a lot of material in this one. Now I sell these for $2.89. That's what I typically sell them for. This one was a little bit different because we have a tin roof. And this was a custom size. So on this particular cart, I think I sold it for $3.99 is what the cart sold for. So pretty good profit margin for us. Now, obviously there's a little bit of work involved. So I'm gonna go through all of the parts so you know the lengths of all the parts. Now, I would probably recommend a set of plans because it's just complicated enough where you might like a set of plans. Now, with our plans, if you're not already familiar, you get our woodworking plans, you get the finished 3D SketchUp model, which I think is very valuable to have when you're starting a project, being able to look at the finished product before we actually begin building. But you also get all of our marketing materials. So you get our Facebook description that we use when we sell these on Facebook Marketplace. You get a really nice marketing video. You get all of our stage photos of the finished cart. So if you're building to make a profit, then you can take our pictures, post them, and say, hey, look what I can do. And then if you wind up selling a cart, then you'll be able to go ahead and build it. So you don't have to build it first. Now we got to build everything so we can have our stage photos and stuff, but you would not have to do that. All right, because we give you all that stuff with the plans. So with all that said, let's get going on our lengths. It's pretty straightforward. We've got 8 pieces of fence picket here that is 48 inches long. So it's going to be a pretty sizable cart. And then we've got 1 2x6 that is 55 and a half. And then we have 1 2x6 that is 34 3/4. And then the next one is 28 and a half. So that's this one here. And then we've got 2 pieces here that are 17 and a half. And then we have 2 pieces that are 14 3/8. Now on all of our 2x6s, we're going to rip everything down to 2.5 inches wide. Okay. And then we go over here to the 2x4s, and on the 2x4s, we're ripping everything down to 1.5 inches wide. So we're going to get 2 sticks out of 1 length. Okay. So on the 2x4s, we've got 39 1/4. We just need 1 of those. And then we have 36 inch. So we need 2 of those at 36 inches. And then we have 1 at 27 1/4. We have 1 at 25 and a half. And then we have 2 at 16 1/4. Okay. So that is all of our lengths that we need. And again, we're doing the tin roof, so we'll cut that to size when we get there. So for right now, I am going to go ahead and mill all of this material to its final width. So either 2.5 inches wide or 1.5 inches wide. So we're going to run all that through the table saw, and then we can discuss how it all goes together. Well, we have all of our parts have been milled down to their proper width. See, we have 1.5 by 1.5, and then we have our 2.5-inch wide boards. But we did some additional milling that I want to kind of go over. So these pieces here, these pieces are our 25.5-inch pieces, and you can see we have a little 45-degree miter there. I came back 3 inches, and then to the center of my hole I came back 2 inches. This is a 3/8-inch hole, and we're going to be using 5/16 bolts to bolt it down. So that's the milling that needs to happen there on those pieces. And then we have a 36-inch board here. Let's see, where are our 36s? Right here. So this is our 36-inch long board, and you can see we have a 30-degree miter added the whole length of that board, and we'll explain that, how all that works when we get to it. And then our long pieces here, you can see here, those are our 39.5s, and they have a 30-degree as well. And then our 27.5s also have a 30-degree. So these are our roof uprights, okay, for those. So that's some additional milling that we had to do there. Now, our long pieces here, these are the 55.5-inch pieces. Our long pieces here, we have to add this detail for the handles. Okay, so we're going to cut this out, and then what we're going to do is we're going to measure back 4 inches, and that's where this starts, right here at that 4-inch mark. And then we'll cut the handle like that. All right, so let me get this cut out, and then I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. So you can kind of see this board is really wet. It sat outside all night, so it's kind of got some dew on it. So the pencil didn't want to work very well, but you can kind of see that. And once we cut this one out, then we'll use that as the template for the match. But you can see we cut out our pattern here. And then, like I said, I measured back 4 inches, and then that's where I set my template and make that mark. And then I just moved this up here, made my mark there, and then just connected the dots. So I'll grab my jigsaw, and we'll just go ahead and cut that little detail out, and then do the same thing on this one as well. Okay, so you kind of see what we did there on this one. We've got it all sanded up, and then I used this one to make this one. Okay, so we'll go ahead and cut that one out, get it all sanded up, and we can start the assembly process. All right, so now the fun part, assembly. So really this cart consists of a multitude of sub-assemblies and goes together remarkably quickly. So the first thing I'm going to do is the main sub-assembly. So we've got our 55.5-inch handles here, and you can see how I have them oriented. I came in 1.5 inches, and then I came in 20 3/4, and then from this end I came in 14 inches. Okay, and so now we can go ahead and put in our 14 3/8-inch boards. Now these boards here, so we're going to line them up to that line just like so, but they are going to go horizontally. So they're going to go flush up top. We're going to use 3.5-inch screws to put those together. And then our middle board is going to go to the right of this line at 23 3/4, but it's going to go vertically. Okay. So let me go ahead and get that part done, and then we can move on to our next step. Okay, so this assembly is now complete. And the key takeaway from this assembly is that we want to make sure that our horizontal boards here are flush with what I would call the bottom. So if you look at the handles, you see how the handles are oriented? So this will become the top of the unit on the back side here. So we have our handles sitting like this, and then those boards have to be flush up top here, okay? So now that we have that done, I think our next step will be to make the two leg assemblies. So we will go ahead and get rid of this and grab our leg assembly pieces and make those. So this is how our first leg assembly will look. Our two outside pieces are our 28.5, and then our horizontal piece, there are 17.5. We came up from the bottom 3 inches, and then we came down from the top 2.5, and I just used a 2.5 inch extra board here for our spacer. So come down 2.5, or you could measure 2.5. And we'll go ahead and put all this together. I'm going to use 4-inch screws. I've got a bunch of these 4-inch screws I got to use up. Otherwise, I would normally use 3.5. But 3.5, 4-inch screws, whatever you got. We'll go ahead and put that together. This leg assembly is the leg assembly that is going to hold our wheels. Okay, so now that we have our leg assembly put together, now we need to mark the center for our wheel bolt. And so we're going to use our Craig multi-mark here. So we're going to come up from the bottom 1.5 inches, and then we're going to come over from the side 1.25 inches, because of course that is 2.5 inches wide. Now the one little caveat here is make sure you're making your mark on the 3-inch side, because that side's 2.5, so they look quite similar. But make sure you're on the 3-inch side, up 1.5 inches, over 1.25 inches. X marks the spot. Now what I do is I am going to use my pocket hole, which is a 3/8 inch diameter pocket hole drill bit, and drill a hole. And then I'm going to switch over. I've got some drill bits I bought at Harbor Freight, because this takes a 1/2 inch diameter. So then I'll kind of use a 1/2 inch drill bit and finish it off. Okay, so I'll go ahead and mark those on both sides here, get those drilled out, ready for my wheels. All right, so we have our other leg assembly put together. We came up 9.25 inches, 17.5 inches board. Then we came up 2.5, of course. And then what we did is we have marked, we came in 3 inches, made a line, and you can see there we marked at 1.25 inches on both sides. And what we're going to do is we're going to drill a 3/8 inch hole here momentarily with our pocket hole bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to drill the hole locations for these guys. And that's what's going to hold our leg assembly to our main top assembly. But we have to locate and install these what they call nutserts. And so we'll show you how we're going to do that here momentarily. I need to clean off my workbench a little bit and get set up for this, but I'll show you how this all goes together here in just a moment. Okay, so we have our main leg assemblies now sitting on top of our leg assemblies, sitting on top of our main assembly. Now, of course, we've got this board on our main assembly is horizontal, so our legs just line up to that. I measured in 3 inches and up 1.25 inches, drilled a 3/8 inch hole in both of these pieces. This screw is just holding that leg assembly temporarily. Now over here, we did the exact same thing, measured over 3 inches, etc., 1.25 inches, drilled 2 3/8 inch holes. Now, what I did here, you can see here, there's a hole that I just drilled with my pocket hole drill bit here. I just drilled a hole. See that there? And you see that here. Now, it doesn't need to be very deep. It just needs to be an indicator. And basically what that means is, because technically these could be turned around either way, right? So in order for these holes to absolutely line up, we just make sure that that is on the inside. And then that will get you oriented correctly on both of them. Okay, so when we go to assemble it, just make sure the hole's facing the inside, then we know that those will line up perfectly. All right, even if our measurement's off a little bit. So now what we need to do is take these legs, see this leg is just sitting here, take this leg off, and you can see the hole below. We need to make that slightly larger to fit our nutserts. So we'll go ahead and make that hole just a little bit bigger to fit our nutsert. So I have that nutsert now installed, and what I did is I used a 13/32. You can see that there, 13/32 drill bit. It just so happens that's what it works. Then I used one of these. I will link in the description the nutserts and the handles that I ordered off of Amazon. But you can see there, then we can use this, just stick a wing nut on there or a regular nut. And then we can use this to just, you want to get it started kind of straight. Then you can use that knob. That wing nut will act as a stop. And you just go ahead and screw it in there till that flange is just, and I just take a hammer and tap that wing nut, and then you can unscrew that. You can see that is nice and flush, and now those are in place. And now we can use the rest of these little knob handles to tighten this leg down to the main assembly. So we got to repeat that process over here. So I'll go ahead and get that done and show you what that looks like. Okay, so what we're going to do now that we have our little knobs in place, one thing you want to do when you're tightening those down, tighten them down, and then just give that leg a little wiggle and then tighten it a little bit more. You'll see that that will tighten up a little bit if you just wiggle it. They're pretty solid with just this, but when we put in our horizontal shelf, there'll be some pins that will keep these legs spread apart properly. So for now, our next step, I'm going to go ahead and put our wheels on, and then we'll kind of set it up right and take a look at it here. Looking pretty snazzy. So now we'll go ahead and flip it over. You can see here we do have our wheels mounted now, and you can see what I did. I put in 2 washers just to hold this black hub away from here, so there's less surface restriction. And then I have 1 washer on the back side with my wing nut. You can see that there on that side too. Okay, so that is basically the main gist of the frame for the lower part of the cart. So now I will go ahead and put the fence picket pieces together for the top and the shelf, and then we will assemble the roof supports and the roof frame, and then work on our tin roof here. Okay, so let me get this flipped around and see what it looks like. So now you can kind of see how that's all going to look. So I'll go ahead and put the top together, and the top gets permanently mounted, and then the lower shelf will have pins that you can take on and off. So I'll go ahead and get those pieces put together, and then we can move on from there. So this is our lower shelf assembly. We took 3 48-inch fence pickets, and then we capped those together, so with full width fence picket on both sides. Then we took one fence picket and ripped it to 2.5 inches wide. And then we field mark it, so we don't measure it. We just line it up there, mark it with a pencil, and cut it to length on both sides there. So we've got it all put together with 1-inch staples for the moment. Now this little support piece is going to hold these three together in the middle. And so what I like to do is I just take this piece, push it all the way to the side, and measure what's left. So in this case, it's 31.5 inches is what's left. So I take 31.5 and I divide it by 2. It is 15.75. So I will measure over 15.75. In between our board, 15.75 will be left. So, and then everywhere I put a staple, I will go back in and put in a 1-inch screw. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then our lower shelf will be complete. I am going to sand off all the yuckiness, round over the edges a little bit, and then we'll put it on our cart. All right, so we have our top all put together. So we used 5 48-inch pieces of fence picket. We connected that together with one full width fence picket going this way. Same thing, and then this is a little 2.5-inch block. And then we just position this in the middle. So you can see we put it all together with little staples initially, and then came back in with 1-inch screws and put it all together. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that assembly and mount it to our top. So we will go ahead and get that positioned, and I'll show you how that looks. All right, so we do have our top fully attached to our main assembly here. So what we did is we came off the end here 4 inches, and then I did not give you a specific dimension here, because the reason I do that is these fence pickets do sometimes vary in width. So basically we just want to make sure that this dimension is the same on the other side. In my case, it worked out to be 4.75. The plans actually show 5 inches from this point to the outside edge, 3 inches here. But again, you just want to center it front to back. But this will be 4 from the end here to the edge. And then that should leave you 10 inches. This will be 4 as well, but that should leave you 10 inches right here, and that's exactly what I got. Okay, so now let's talk about screw locations. Again, this is 2.5 inches wide. This is 1.25 inches thick. So we're using 3.5-inch screws going through that 2.5 into this 1 inch. So we put 2 there, then we put 2 in the middle, then we put 1 here, and then 1 on the outside. And we did that obviously on both sides there. You can see is the same. Okay, so now our cart base is basically complete. So now we'll go ahead and set it back down and put together our roof supports and take a look at how we're going to do this roof. All right, so that is what she looks like now. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do the roof supports. We do need our little add-on shelf to go over our handles, but we'll wait and do that towards the end. So let's go ahead and get our roof assembly supports put together, and then we'll just kind of figure out this tin part as well. All right, so this is what one roof support looks like. So we've taken our bottom piece here, which is 25.5, and we came in 2 inches from the end and put in a 3/8 inch hole. Then we came in 3 inches to locate our verticals. So you see our long vertical with our 30-degree miter, then our short vertical with a 30-degree miter. And these are 17.5 inch pieces. We came down from the point 3 inches, And then what I do is I just take my carpenter square this other side, make a mark, and then put in my screw. Then I came down 11 inches on this side, but then on this side again I use my carpenter square, make sure I'm square, pop in a screw. I use 4-inch screws for this assembly because I happen to have some. So I need to make an identical assembly, and then we can put it on our cart. Okay, our roof supports are now on, but I must confess, I did make some changes. So I was not happy with the original configuration. I wasn't happy with it on the computer, wasn't happy with it when we put it on the cart, so I decided to make a couple of changes. So the back board, the long one, is now 38.5 with a 15 degree instead of 30 degree miter. Okay, so the front one then becomes 33 3/4 with a 15 degree miter. And then we still came down to 3 inches, just like before, but then this space now becomes 14. And so now I am happy with that. It was just too short on the front. I was not happy with how short it was. Where this, I'm much happier with. So now I'm going to go ahead and build out the frame for my tin roof support. We'll go ahead and get that done. All right, so in preparing to figure out this roof setup, I realized that early on when I was talking about our pieces that we need, I totally messed up our roof framing. So what we need are 2 pieces that are 54 inches long to go to the width of our roof, that are 1.5 by 1.5 inches. And then we are going to need at least 4 pieces that are 31 inches. Now we have 4 pieces over there that are 36 inches. So we're going to utilize those. And then we also have 2 pieces that are 32 inches. We'll probably wind up utilizing those too. But we do need to cut 2 pieces that are 54. So I'm going to take a few measurements and then I'll explain like in better detail exactly how this is all going to go together. But one of the measurements I need is at the base from the inside of my roof support to the inside of my roof support. I need to get that actual dimension. And then I need to get some dimensions off that tin over there as well. And like I said, then I'll explain things in more detail. All right, well, this poor roof section, I'll tell you, seems like I've had to revamp this thing numerous times, and I had to revamp it one more time because I made a bit of a mistake. When I started cutting the tin, for some reason I cut the first piece 30 inches long because I wasn't thinking, and it really should have been 36 inches long. So because I don't have enough tin, it kind of worked out in my favor because I only had an 8-foot piece of tin anyhow. So anyhow, I would have cut the tin 32, 32, and 32. That would have been 96. But in this case, we did 30, 30, and 30. So this is 54 inches wide. And then, so we've got one right at the end this wound up being 25. Because I'm going to have the tin hang over the edge 1 inch. Okay, that's what my thought process is. And then I came in 2 1/8 and 5 1/4, and that gives me just a tiny little bit of room. So double check that. Make sure you have enough room for one of these 1.5 by 1.5, because that's what our uprights are. So the distance from this side to this side is 43.5, and that's what I have on my cart in between. So this will slide right over. Now I do need to add one more piece to the puzzle here once I figured out how far this is going to come forward or back. I will have to add one more piece of blocking, which I'll explain here a little bit later. But right now I'm going to start putting on my tin, and the reason I didn't put any more of my verticals in, because I want these verticals to line up right there. So right in the valley, right, of my tin. So I'm gonna go ahead and mount my first piece of tin on this side, mount my first piece of tin on that side, and then I'll figure out where my uprights need to be to land right there in the valley. Okay, so let me go ahead and get that done, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so we have our tin in place. What I did is I set my first piece of tin on the left, then I put a piece of tin on the right, and there's this little strip in between, so I just set the full width panel over that and went ahead and secured it with some 1-inch sheet metal roofing screws with the rubber washer. And in doing that, I really determined that because it's such a short span, I think we can get by with it without any additional verticals. But what I am going to do, I am going to put one vertical in the middle just to spread those out a little bit. I honestly, I don't know if I will or not. I don't know that it's really necessary, to be honest. And the lighter that is, the better. So I may not put that centerpiece in, because basically our roof panel being screwed to our frame is going to keep that frame separated. That's the only reason to put that vertical in, is for that purpose. Otherwise, structurally, this is plenty good. So there is one more thing I need to do, though. I will need to figure out a piece of blocking to hold that roof in place, and you'll see that and make more sense when I actually put the roof on. You'll see exactly how that's all going to work out. So I think what I'll do is I'll figure out that blocking, get the block in there, and then I'll get the roof on, and then you'll see exactly how it all works. All right, so here are those little blocks I was talking about. They are 4 7/8 inches with a 15-degree miter. And now the main thing is the angle has to be kind of like face down. So they're going to go in just like that. We'll pop in some 2.5-inch screws this way. And then this one, of course, will come down here. And then we'll put some 2.5-inch. But again, that angle is kind of sloped down. We'll pop in some 2.5-inch screws to hold that block into place. And then it should all line up perfectly. That'll be the next test. So let me get those blocks permanently mounted, and then we'll see how it works. All right, so now you can kind of see how our roof is in place. Now, this right here, this front lip is basically as tall as I am. So it's probably like 5'11" or so off the ground. And that's a good height. If we put this at 20 degrees, it would show more of the tin roof, and I think it still would be at a height where it would be okay. But now you can kind of see how that looks on there. When it was at 30 degrees, it was just too much. It was just too much. Now, if we look here, you can see that we have that block, and you can see that the front doesn't have quite as much overhang as the back. So if you didn't, if you wanted to adjust that, you could. That's just how I decided to do it. But obviously, it's a personal preference. And one other thing to consider is this can also be mounted backwards, so in other words, this could be the sail side over here, and that will give you more headroom here, which might be nice. But also, if it was raining, the rain would go off to the back versus the front. So there is that. You've got these bars here, or you could have another shelf going across if you wanted to. And same thing up here. You could have some boards going across and have a shelf up there. I am going to add something here on the side here. I'm going to add some shelves to the side here. So I'll go ahead and show you what we're going to do there to add those. But that's just a little extra. And then we still have a little extra shelf we got to make to go over our handles as well. So I'll go ahead and get this into position, and we'll add those little final touches, and then I'll show it to you one more time. So we have our little side shelf made. So what I did is I measured the actual width, and of course cut those accordingly. They worked out to 27 1/4. And then you can see standard full width fence picket, full width fence picket, and then here in the middle, and then our 2.5 and 2.5 cleat with screws. And then once I placed it, you can see I scribed. Rather than measure and do all that, just place it where it goes, and then take a pencil and scribe where these handles are, because we're going to put a little cleat so we know that it'll just set right into place, left to right. So we'll figure out what we're going to use for a piece of cleat. Could be a 2x4, could be just a piece of fence picket, whatever, but we're going to put a little cleat in here so that we know exactly where it goes in here. So you can see what we did here. We just found this piece of fence picket. I think it's 1.5 inches wide, just a random piece of scrap laying right over in that pile. And I came just to the inside of that line. And then just popped in one staple, one screw. Same thing, see how we're just to the inside? We're flush on the one end. So the flush end's always gotta go up against the cart. And that way you'll know how to orient the shelf every time as well. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that in place. Okay, so you can see we have our little shelf in place, and there's very little, if any, wiggle room side to side, but it does slide in and out nice and easy. So that's good. Got me to thinking about my bottom shelf. We needed to be able to have something permanent so we know which way this shelf is to be orientated, because our holes need to line up. So what I did was I just took my pocket hole drill bit. I drilled an extra hole. So this side has 2 holes, that side will only have 1. So this side's had 2. And then on the shelf, you see how I put a little hole there and a little hole there? And so we know that basically those extra holes need to be lined up on the same side, and that way we'll know what's front and what's back. Okay? So when we lay this shelf down, hole, we know that's how it gets lined up. So we'll go ahead and get it all staged up, and I'll show you what it looks like when we're all done. Okay, well that's what it looks like all staged up. So you can see a few little knickknacks, little greenery, and we're good to go here. So I hope you enjoyed this project, and hope you try it out yourself. And once you've built them, they really do go together pretty quickly overall. I'd say a half a day project to a day for your first one. But thanks for watching.